Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mr. Worrell? Mr. Stark?
Here.
Mrs. McGinley? Here. Mr. Riggs?
Here.
Mr. Marcus?
Here.
Here.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes?
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Claims?
Thanks. Make a motion to accept the claims.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And finally, the financials.
I'll make a motion, we accept the financials as written.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. First of all, public hearing, none? Okay. First guest, Melanie Douglas, Commonwealth Engineering.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we are kicking off our preliminary engineering report process. Tonight, we have the president of our company, Al Stong, as well as Trudy Quick, who will be working on this project. I know that's a little cumbersome to go through a kickoff meeting at a board meeting, so we will try to talk very fast and go through it, but answer all of your questions. And I understand why we do it, because we want to make sure that everyone is engaged, and especially with the latest news that we have, and we want to make sure that we are getting all the information that you need, and that you're comfortable with this process, and that we answer any questions that you may have, and there may be questions that come up during the process. So Al, you have visuals, thank goodness. I'll stand and look like Vanna, how's that?
Sure.
You can talk.
Dan, you want to pass out the agenda?
All right, agendas are passed out. Does anyone in the audience want an agenda? Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Can I give an agenda?
You did, yeah, I put one.
Somewhere up
Yeah.
Is it?
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
I'll need one too.
Oh, here.
Thank you.
So introductions and general discussions. I introduced Commonwealth. Communication preferences going forward. You still want us to work with Doug and Dan? You want to be the point of contact?
Yeah, let's go
Okay.
ahead, make me the point of contact.
Okay, and communication moving forward, email, text, phone, what's your preference?
Email,
Email, okay?
you have my
Yes.
other numbers as well.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll run through this quickly. What we'll want to do is we'll want to schedule a follow-up meeting with, if you designate a council representative on the project, if that's Dan, and your utility superintendent, and then we can go through this in a little more detail. But your preliminary engineering report has a prescribed content. The primary purpose of the report is to identify existing conditions, identify future needs, and then price out alternatives to address the existing conditions and the future needs, and come up with some recommendations that are acceptable to the town. So as far as contents, first thing we want to do is we want to understand the objective. My understanding that the objective was to fund an elevated storage tank, primary objective. Does the council have any other objectives that they want to accomplish with respect to this preliminary engineering report?
I think we need to evaluate the age and condition of the town system at the same time.
Okay.
The 3 wells, a elevation valve, and potentially combining the systems. And if we do that, then what would we need to do to the city side as far as plant to bring it up to speed?
Sure.
Then would like to, our goal would be look at some of the high risk areas of the system.
Okay. All those items will be accomplished within the preliminary engineering report. I wanted to make sure that we didn't lose focus on your primary objective, and we identified what was primary, what was secondary. Sounds like your desired needs are in line with the assembly of a preliminary engineering report. What we'll do is we'll obtain your as-built, we'll put together a water model. We'll run that water model. We'll also get documentation of where you've had concerns, breaks, things of that. We'll look at your water use records as well to see what your water loss is. And we'll come up with multiple alternatives, and then we can discuss how to potentially prioritize those based upon cost. So the assembly of your PER, it'll take between 120 and 150 days to assemble and submit to the U.S. Department of Agriculture for funding consideration. Was there any other sources of funding that you wanted to consider, such as State Revolving Loan Fund, Office of Community and Rural Affairs?
At this point, whatever is the most economic, we want to take a look at all, whether it's SRF.
Okay, we'll coordinate that with you then, moving forward. The outline, if you move on to item D, the PER outline, it will first consist of project planning area. So the project planning area will include your town, your service area for your existing system, and also the system out for the industrial park and its service area. The existing facilities, we'll look at the wells, the storage tanks, the distribution system. And then for the industrial park, we'll do the same, but you have a water treatment plant there as well. So,
Out with the existing and talking the city side, will we be looking at Okra?
we could. What my recommendation would be is that we go through U.S. Department of Agriculture first. It all depends upon your ability to obtain grant. If you can't obtain grant through U.S. Department of Agriculture, then certainly we look at Okra in conjunction with that. If you can obtain grant with U.S. Department of Agriculture, you want to focus on that first because you don't have a wage scale associated with those funds, and any additional grant that you receive from Okra or other sources would be offset by the reduction in the grant from Department of Agriculture. As far as the need for the project, we'll basically look at any type of customer complaints, utility breaks, fire flow protection, storage requirements, things of that nature, and as well as the aging infrastructure. We'll take a look at the years in which they were installed and useful life so that we can kind of prioritize areas of potential concern. The additional items that we'll look at, obviously we're going to look at storage, we'll look at fire flow protection, and what we call water wheeling. That's the state revolving loan funds terminology for connecting to other sources, water wheeling. So we'll look at connecting your system with the industrial park system and what the repercussions may be, because there are potential downfalls to that if you're mixing water sources and the water chemistry doesn't match. For the alternatives considered, we'll look at the potential for incorporating treatment, additional storage, upgrades to reinforce your distribution system, fire flow protection, additional water supply, which is the wells and the interconnections. And then when we look at these alternatives, we'll evaluate them from a monetary and non-monetary standpoint. So a monetary standpoint, we'll identify present worth, which takes into account operational costs. And from a non-monetary standpoint, we'll have discussions with the town to see what's important to you. We have one community that doesn't want to build a plant. You know, that's a non-monetary consideration. They want to just stick with the wells. So we identify what your desires are, and we take that into account. Excuse me. Once we go through the monetary and non-monetary comparisons, then we'll come up with recommended projects and costs. We'll come up with preliminary impact to rate, but you won't want to utilize our information for your decision making. It will be utilized to convey to your rate consultant so he can run through the numbers and provide you with actual cost impacts. Then once all of that is done, and we come up with our conclusions and recommendations, we'll project impacts with the subsidized interest rates with U.S. Department of Agriculture. I don't know, Melanie, if you know the interest rate at this time. It's been down as low as 1.375. So
I think it's somewhere between 1.25 and 1.35. They just lowered it, so I can find that information for you. It's very, very competitive.
well, with the things that are going on within the stock market now, I would imagine that you'll have a very attractive rate come time for the project. So we'll look at that subsidized interest rate, and we'll also look at potential grants that we can receive. Rule of thumb is $45 per user is what they would consider a baseline. They also will look at communities surrounding you, and if you're above the average of surrounding communities, they'll consider grant funds as well. Data requests, we've identified information that we would like to obtain from the town. So if Melanie can coordinate with your superintendent and see if we can round that information up. And then when we schedule our working session, we can share that information and go through this in more detail. Last thing is water audit and validation. Water audits are required, it's a new requirement of the state. They require you to audit and validate your system, and there's a prescribed approach to that. The reason is they want to identify water loss. So the state is looking to address the potable water issues across the state, and they're utilizing the water audits as part of that to see what your water loss is, and then they'll use that information to consider water wheeling alternatives or interconnection alternatives. This is a service that Commonwealth offers, and because we're doing your preliminary engineering report, we'll do this in conjunction with our PER at no additional cost if your superintendent wants it done. So that being said, that's the approach to the PER, that's the content. Are there any questions? Okay, I'll just have Melanie coordinate then with you, Dan, with your superintendent, and we'll get a work session scheduled. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, Eastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission. Jake Lester, Steve Higginbotham. Excuse me.
Thank you for taking a few minutes to talk to us today. Sarah Mitchell is actually on a cruise as we speak, so she won't be here tonight, but she will be involved in this project. So we're looking at the possibility throughout our 6-county region of applying for regional stellar designation through OKRA. Most of you are familiar with OKRA. You know the Community Development Block Grant program that they have available. The regional stellar is about 3 years old now. It is an opportunity for groupings of communities, 2 or more, to apply for the stellar program as a region. So we've talked to folks in Wayne County, communities in Wayne County. There are some stipulations to be eligible to apply, and one of those you don't meet at the moment. That is that you have to have a comprehensive plan that is no more than 7 years old. So I know your comprehensive plan is well underway, but it will need to be completed well in advance of the final application deadline for stellar, which is the end of September. The initial deadline is for a letter of interest, and that is coming up very quickly on April the 3rd. So there are a few things that you would need to do if you're interested in being involved in this process. We have talked to Fountain City, to Hagerstown, and now to you folks. And we're looking at putting together a grouping from those communities that either have or will have in the very short term a comprehensive plan. and have some ideas for projects that they would like to see completed. So there would be some work that you all would need to do between now and April the 3rd. One is that you, as a council, would have to agree that you want to participate. We'd have to have discussions about who else that you're willing to participate with. It looks at this point like the most likely groups would be Cambridge and Hagerstown. There's potential for the county to be involved as well. So we'll play it by ear, see how that shakes out, but all those decisions need to be made by April 3rd. You would need to provide a letter to Okra, signed by Dan as the president of the council, that states where you're at with the current comprehensive planning process and when you anticipate having that completed and adopted.
Could you
Go ahead.
change Cambridge for Fountain City and mean that it'd be Hagerstown and Fountain City that we'd be working with?
I'm sorry?
You said we'd be working with Cambridge and Hagerstown.
Those would be the groups that I believe
Is Fountain
are
City
most
out?
likely. Fountain City is still contemplating it, but they've got some other things going on, and we met with them last week, and I didn't get the sense that this was a high priority for them. They had some interest, but we'll see what happens. Could be 3 communities, could be 2, and the county might be an additional player potential. So we'll see where that goes from here. I gave you a printout of frequently asked questions by communities that are going through this process. I won't read that to you, but I'll leave it with you to take a look at. On, I believe, the 4th page, there is a breakout of the funding potential. And folks from Okra will be very upfront with you, and they'll say, look, this is not a gimme. They'll have a number of applicants, just like with funding rounds for community development block grants. There'll be more applicants than there are designees. In this case, there'll be 1 designee out of however many applicants they end up with. But they will tell you that the real benefit of the stellar process is working together with your neighbors to come up with a plan that you want to pursue. It's not dissimilar from the comprehensive planning process that you've just are going through right now, but it's a little different in the focus, where we're talking about quality of life type projects that you are interested in putting together over the next several years versus a lot of land use kind of issues that your comprehensive plan includes. So there is funding. The designee is able to, you still have to apply for each project and be accepted. You have to meet all the requirements for the federal funding that is allocated, but there's up to $8 million of CDBG money for the designee that could be accessed if you have programs that qualify. There is a $20,000 planning grant for all of the finalists in the process, so you could hire someone to work with you and any other communities that join you in this process. There's potentially money for historic preservation, and there are rental housing tax credits, upwards of $12 million or so. There's a pot of money for owner-occupied rehabilitation of homes for low-income homeowners. There's NDOT funding in the amount of about $4 million, and then there's a grant from the Indiana State Department of Health, about $75,000, that potentially would be accessible. Now, that's the total pool of resources that might be available to the designee. Keep in mind that you would not be the sole designee, so whether there's 2 or 3 or 4 communities that come together to apply, then part of that planning process would be to figure out what projects do we want to complete and how might we allocate available resources to complete as many of those projects as we can. So if there were $8 million for CDBG projects, and Cambridge and Hagerstown and Fountain City were the parties involved in the application, how would those dollars be allocated between those three communities? And how can you work out your thoughts on, we want to do this, we want to do that, but Hagerstown wants to do something else and Fountain City wants to do something else. So how do you equitably allocate those resources so that you can jointly accomplish as many of your objectives as would be possible? So with those things in mind, again, we would need a letter giving Oprah information on how far along you are and when you plan to complete your plan. You would need to, as a group, sign off on this application that yes, you want to apply for the stellar designation. And then there's a project list that you would need to put together and a couple other things that Sarah and Steve and I will work with you on if you decide you want to pursue this. So I think Steve has a little more information that he wants to share with you.
Just very quickly to tie in with what Jeff said, the pages aren't numbered in that handout that he gave you, but starting on question 28 is the items that's needed for the letter of intent. And so when you look at that, those items would have to be put together obviously fairly rapidly with the deadline of April 3rd coming up. And knowing that your council doesn't meet on a regular basis between now and then, I would suggest you take this document, read it, and communicate among yourselves, and then at least so you can give us some indication of your interest. We talk to Hagerstown next week, and then Sarah is back the 17th. So sometime this next week we need something from you folks as to what your intent may be.
A couple of further points. As you know, when you apply for CDBG funding in the regular funding rounds, you're limited to $500,000 or $600,000. There are some different parameters depending on what kind of project you're applying for and how you fit into the scheme of things. With Stellar, those caps are taken off, so you could potentially be able to use more than that $500,000 for a sewer project or a water project, as you've been talking about here. There are other options. There are some of these things that you can pool together. You could, for example, and I know you're talking about the possibility of a Lilly application with the Wayne County Foundation. There are some possibilities of using, for example, Lilly money as match for a CDBG project. So there are a lot of ways that you can tie together different funding streams to make your projects more accessible to you. So again, Sarah, Steve, and I are more than happy to work with you going forward, but time is of the essence here for this April 3rd deadline. If we complete that process and you're selected as a finalist, then we have from the end of April until the end of September to put together the actual application, which will go into much more detail. There'll be community meetings that you'll have to participate in to get input from residents in all of the communities that are participating. And there's an opportunity to work with Ball State on getting some demographic and economic information that you can build into your planning process. So it's a valuable opportunity. It is a lot of work, both putting this together in the next 30 days, but also then if you're selected as a finalist, to work over 4 months or so in the summer to complete the actual application by the end of September. So be happy to try to answer any questions you might have, but my card is there on your handout, and don't hesitate to call if you have questions as we go forward with this.
Jeff, doesn't Stellar, winning the Stellar Award, doesn't that keep you from Okra projects for 5 years?
If you are awarded or have a CDBG component in your Stellar program, and I'm going to say Cambridge City in particular, you would be restricted from applying for other grants. But by the same token, typically, if you apply in the regular funding cycle for CDBG, until you complete that process and close out that grant, you're restricted from CDBG as well.
Sure.
And again, the caps that typically apply to the regular funding cycles don't apply to Stellar.
We got our our comprehensive plan through the CDBG grant, so that doesn't eliminate anything?
It should not. We've had communities in the past that have done that, but we'll work through that because you're so close to being done.
Okay.
We may be able to get that closed out before your actual project would come up. Now remember, on the timing on this, the application is due at the end of September. The award would actually be made, or the designation of the recipient for the Stellar designation would come by the end of this year. And then you would start the process of applying for individual project funding. So it would be sometime in 2021 before you might have funding for a project if you're actually designated Stellar. So the timing may be an issue for you as well.
On this letter of interest that would be due less than a month from now, I take it that's when they would need to know before then what projects they're going to be using, where their matching funds would come from, maps of the affected areas, all of that less than 30 days to put together.
They need to know, have a sense of what it is you're interested in doing. And you've got a number of projects that are underway already, at least in the planning phases. The details, the significant details, wouldn't be necessary until the end of September when the full application is due. And in fact, they're really looking for you to make modifications to your original proposals over the summer with the help of input from Ball State and your community meetings to adapt and modify what you put into your letter of interest as you get more information. So the details can shift, and they can actually change between the final application and the time that you apply for funding for a particular project. So there's some flexibility, but they want as much information about how much planning you've done, how much thought you've put into this.
I see that they don't take hard copies of anything, it's all done online. Who does it
Correct.
online? Is that from here? I mean, let's say we put something together magically in the next 30 days and have it with maps. I mean, how does that get transported to online from being a hard copy?
Sarah Mitchell is going to be taking care of that, putting it all together, working with you. Obviously, the information you give her is what she's able to do in the letter of interest is no better than the information you share with her. But Sarah will actually put the letter of interest together.
Being that I like
And time is short. I'm not sure I agree with the magical. It's a lot of hard
Since there's
work.
not another meeting right now, man, I don't know, yeah, maybe they can just pull it out of
I
somewhere.
think Sarah has a wand, actually, so she might just read for one.
Jeff.
Yes.
I like his words, magical. Is there a reason that we've chose to do it? I got the call, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday last week, versus actually making plans to really hit it properly a year from now, or I should say 10 months from now?
We are more than willing to assist you, whether it's now or 10 months from now. In fact, Steve and I have talked about this, and it would be a real push to put this together by April the 3rd. We're willing to try to help. This push came from the January meeting of of the Eastern Indiana Regional Planning Commission, our board meeting, and the thought that groupings throughout the region might want to pursue this. And so this has come out of that meeting in January, the end of January. So yeah, the timeline is very short. And if you feel like you'd be better served by waiting until next year, by all means, wait until next year.
I'm not saying that. I just go back to magical. It's going to be tight.
It will be,
And I just
absolutely.
wondered if there is something that is a benefit this year that next year wouldn't get us.
Timing is everything. So where are your projects? If in fact there's a particular project that is far enough along that you could apply for funding, if you wait until next year for Stellar, you could apply this year for that CDBG project. It may, if you're successful, it may prevent you from applying next year. But there are trade-offs in all of these decisions. So there's no easy answer, Dan. I wish there were.
Well, I think we'll give this a very hard look in the
Absolutely.
next few days.
Sure,
To
absolutely.
make some decisions.
Good.
And our offer to help would go into next year if you push this back.
Okay, absolutely.
Jeff, are these things that can only be done through a region type of application, and they couldn't be done on their own anyway?
Stellar cannot be done except now as a region. And a region, by their definition,
Just takes
is
two
two or
communities.
more communities.
So all it takes, so one community can't do it, but
One
two together
community can't do
can.
it, but for
And their
example,
projects don't need to mirror one another, they can be completely separate projects, but they
No.
just go in together.
and completely separate is probably not accurate. They want them to collectively complement each other so that you are developing the region as opposed to developing this community and developing that.
Obviously, which unfortunately kind of adds another overlay
It
of how
does.
much would have to be done between now.
Again, absolutely, absolutely. So,
One specific question on the definition of communities, because we actually have multiple communities within this area. Are the other four around Cambridge City, or four, yet not big enough? Is there a problem?
it's not a matter of size, it's a matter of, do they have a comprehensive plan that is less than 7 years old? So
There's
that's,
a rub, yeah.
most communities do not. It's an expensive, time-consuming process,
Okay.
and a
That-
lot of
that's a good
communities
answer. Thank you.
don't.
I doubt if
have
they do,
that.
so, they might, I don't know.
But it could be any incorporated community that is outside of a metropolitan planning area. Thanks a lot. Let us know if we can do
Thank you.
that.
Thanks, Jeff.
You bet.
Council, I'd like to get your thoughts here in the next day or so on any ideas, brainstorm on this, and see what we come up with, okay? Other comments on the Stellar funding?
Just that I'll be very happy to work on this and I think the Main Shore organization would contribute as well. As I explained in the last meeting, we do have a Lilly grant. We were selected in this area for a regional impact opportunity with the Lilly Foundation. And we weren't selected by the Lilly Foundation. We were selected by Wayne County Foundation and Forward Wayne County to submit us as the proposal for this area, and it goes in Wednesday of this week, or Friday. So that could be complementary. I met with Sarah on Friday with you, and we talked about how those could be the matching funds potentially for a huge Stellar opportunity for this region. Not just Cambridge City, but how it could take into account a lot of infrastructure opportunities that really we have as a need. So I just offer that as an opportunity, and that I would be glad to work in the next few weeks on this.
And as Jim said, infrastructure would have to play a key point in this, but hearing the funding, the matching funding could come from that. That could be something that is a positive for pushing for this year versus waiting. I want to make sure that,
I guess I had a question. Earlier, you said that we should hold off on pursuing Okra funding until we figure out USDA. But if the Okra funding is part of Stellar with the water, say, water tower project, it would be worthwhile to flip that and do it backwards.
You could take that approach if you want. I wasn't aware that you were looking to solicit for Stellar Community Award. So if you do solicit, you could put your water improvements project in there. Obviously, we could help you with some vague wording to get you going on this initial phase.
This came up in the last few days.
It did seem rather sudden.
Yeah, right. I'll keep you informed. Okay.
No, I was gonna say, I didn't know myself, so.
We didn't.
Okay, other comments? All right, unfinished business. Green Street project, engineering.
Sorry, I was still thinking about water. They can have.
Here, take a look.
Yes.
Here, you can put it there.
So Doug and I met with Bob Warner this week and Ryan Leffield from Choice One Engineering to talk about the Green Street Bridge project. You should have gotten this proposal from Ryan a couple of weeks ago probably, but I wanted to set up a meeting and talk about what these fees meant as far as the scope of the project. I think the fees are in line with the services that they've provided on other projects, and I would recommend that we approve the proposal. So I would make a motion that we approve.
It's no more or less than last year or the prior year before that.
It's similar as far as the scope of the project and what they've done on the other community crossings grants. I think we've gotten a good value.
Okay. Before we get a second, any other questions before moving forward with that?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Bob, does there need to be do I need to read the value or anything like that? Or?
Oh, if you want to on the record. You can.
Okay, it was preliminary engineering fee of $9,000 for the town's part. And the project would be split proportionally by the county and by the town.
Okay. Ordinance 1-2020, changing the ordinance for historic buildings in flood zones.
That's that copy that Bob gave
I
us.
passed it out last month's
Last week.
meeting as first reading, and if anybody wants another copy of that, I've also changed the February date to March on this too. I think that's everybody good. And just to refresh your memory, what this was doing was expanding the definition of a historic structure so it was not so limited as it had been before. All of this was at the recommendation of the state, and this would then in turn help Sugar Creek meet that definition so that they could then apply easily for a variance of flood standards and make the improvements to their building on the daycare center that I think all of us were for. And so I think this meets those suggestions by the state if you find it duly able to be passed. Now, of course, this is not granting the variance, this is just setting it up the stage for it on making your code read so that they could apply for such a variance.
Comments?
I think it's both Doug and my understanding that per the DNR with this wording that would allow them to be able to approve the permitting to go forward.
Is there anything else that we could do to make it easier?
I think this would be
We
it.
covered all
I
that?
think it's all been covered.
Okay.
Although then you'll still then have to file the petition for the variance locally as well as the state. law,
Correct,
what you
correct,
do.
correct.
And that will be up to your Board of Zoning Appeals to meet.
Yeah, once the DNR gives it the thumbs up, then I take it and we go
Right.
for the Board of Zoning Appeals. So,
And with that, Mr. Chair, I think it would be prudent then to, if someone so desires, to make a motion to approve ordinance 1/2020.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-2020.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none?
And here's one sign that still shows the underlying changes in the code, but then with the March date, it's, pass it
All right. Doug, we have the approval to send Chris Stapleton to water school.
Yeah, it's 400, because we're a member of Alliance, it's $400 to send him, plus books. We have a set of books, I just gotta call and verify if that's the correct set that Scott Ham wants, and he'll be traveling to Sellersburg. It's on every Tuesday starting May 12th, and it's just on Tuesdays from 10 to 3 p.m. with a working lunch.
For how many weeks again?
I think it's 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
It starts 5/12 of 20 and ends 6/30 of 20.
And he's ready to go?
Yes.
And this, after this, he'll be able to take which test?
Distribution large. And possibly, we'll have to get a waiver, but possibly water treatment level 3.
Okay. If he can't do the 3, what would we need to do next? The distribution level 3?
3 would take actually another year.
Okay.
Speaking with my IDM representative, they would possibly, under circumstances, would possibly waive him to let him go ahead because he has some technical schooling with good grades and stuff like that, that they would possibly waive him. We just have to run the application through and see what happens.
Okay, very good. All right. Questions about the schooling we're talking about, sending Chris to?
And you'd have to run that waiver application after he takes this class?
Yeah, he's got to take class first before he can go to the school. Now, his April 30th is his 1 year, so then he can definitely do the DSL, and we're going to go ahead and do the application for that, and then work on the, at the same time, we'll send in the WT3.
Okay.
So,
Hearing no questions, could I get a motion to approve Chris Stapleton attending water school?
I'll make a motion to allow Chris Stapleton to attend the water school. Was it $400?
yes,
For $400.
And maybe books.
and books.
And books.
And he'll be driving a
Down truck, yeah.
tram? Okay. Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
If you need help with that, get him registered.
Yeah.
All right. Schedule a date to discuss changes in the personnel policy.
Yeah, we didn't with Bob's adventure.
Bob's adventure.
Sounds like a movie.
Yeah, we need to reschedule because he sent us our personnel policies by email.
Looked it over and I like what you did.
Well, I think it still needs some more tweaks.
Right.
Review that. But I think it was a starting point for everybody to get thinking about it, so.
I like the size.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's better than 50 or 60 pages.
Yeah. What's everybody, can we look at a date here soon to discuss this? Say Thursday evening?
Oh, I can't this week.
Okay.
But I have the rest of the week I got meetings.
Next Tuesday?
What is it, is that the 17th?
Correct.
Yeah,
Nope.
double.
I'll be gone.
Nope, okay. Wednesday?
We got a conflict.
Wednesday the 18th?
We can reschedule again, I guess.
At what time do you think, at 6? What time do you get in town, 6?
Anything?
Works for me. That's fine.
Debbie?
Bob, you got anything?
Boy, I wish I forgot to bring my calendar with me. I'll check. I think I'm okay, but I want to reserve the right to stay there. I
Right.
can look at it. I can look as soon as I
Yeah,
get back to
okay,
the office
so
tonight.
tentatively, he's gonna let us know.
If by some chance, does anybody, is the Thursday the 19th? Could we make that the 2nd?
I can make that work.
Okay.
That's actually better.
Do you wanna
I'll
go
check
to
both
Thursday
He's gonna
first?
check.
I'll check.
Okay,
Okay.
see what Bob says.
All right, Bob, if they're both open Everybody else, would Thursday be better, or would Thursday work?
So
Option
first
one.
option's 19th, second option's 18th, okay.
Debbie? 19,
19,
first option,
okay.
all right. Okay,
Okay, so I'll send you all an email tomorrow and let you know after I talk to Bob.
great.
Okay.
All right, any other unfinished business or comments? Hearing none?
I guess just real quickly, I just wanted to update everybody. We're still talking with Milestone about the Fifth Street project. I thought we'd come to a resolution, and then there was some more discussion. I think we might come up with a better idea. Doug, I'll need to follow up with you on the thing, but I think hopefully soon we'll be able to move forward with that.
Can you give us any details on that, Nate?
Basically, just looking at minimizing the town's maintenance liability, whether it's looking directly at this project or maybe some other areas that might have a more urgent need for repair. Just exploring that option a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay, new business. Approval to hire 2 part-time employees for mowing.
Yeah, John Moisner, I don't know how many years he's been mowing part-time.
Long time.
Yeah, he's the one that mows in the park. Same pay as last year, same 20, no more than 25 hours, or 28 hours a week, but yeah, so he's the one that makes the park look nice. And then the other one would be Daniel Kelly, we used him last year. Same pay.
What's the Angels' primary? Just general or?
He just mows.
Wherever he needs you.
We've used him elsewhere too, so leaf pickup and stuff like that.
Okay. Questions? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion on hiring 2 part-time employees for mowing this summer.
Second. All right. All in favor of hiring 2 part-time employees for mowing this summer? Thank you.
Thank you.
Changing the date on the farm ground lease agreement.
I gave everybody a copy of that lease agreement, and I talked briefly with Bob about that, and it makes sense why they want to change it, but
Well, and I think what has happened is that probably at one time, years and years ago, it ran from a December 1 to a November 30th lease
Okay.
year, but sometime prior to me coming aboard, I think things got late and it didn't get renewed up until March, and so consequently it started being March 1st through November 30th, and as you know, these are 3-year lease terms. And I'm not sure I understood your email when you said, well, they were still farming in November. Well, it still goes through November.
well,
so-
their contract doesn't. It ended in March. The contract that she showed us, Doug and I, when we were talking to him, and it says like,
This ends in November.
so you have where?
Right here.
Where? November 30th. Where do you see that? I don't see it online.
March 1st,
Oh, I've got-
running through
okay.
November 30th.
I've got the lease amendment, so I gave you guys.
Well, that's the
Okay.
lease
Here it is,
agreement.
I got it now. Okay, they're looking at the March when it ends, when they thought they only went to March 20th. And they wanted to farm it out for the rest of the year, but if that's, yeah, okay, so then it just needs to be, it can keep going till 2000, well, it ended
No, it's
November
the end of
30th,
last November,
2019,
so it was up for,
right?
it was
So
up for another
then-
3-year bid this year, so we have to open it up for the new 3-year lease bids or 1-year lease bids, however you want to do it, but we can't just automatically extend theirs at this point in time.
That's how they've done in the past.
We just let it sit empty?
No, we let them come in for bids.
Well, yeah, I know, I get that, I understand that. But if we change the dates to December instead of March, as they were saying, that's why they were wanting to go the rest of this year and pay.
See, it wouldn't even be a partial year, it'd be a
Prorated.
whole full another year. This is full farming year now. I doubt if anybody's put, I'm not a farmer, I don't think anybody's put anything out yet
No,
this year.
I don't think so.
And so consequently, it'd be a new year. I mean, so their third year ended last November 30th. And so it's just a matter, and I suppose, yeah, we could say it started December 1st, but depending on what anybody has done between December 1st and now, I mean, I think what you need to do is, the next time is we need to jump on this quicker and have it go, be ready to open up bids in December of 2 years from now, 3 years from now, or whatever. So we can make it then from December 1st, but right now, there is no lease, and I'm not sure we could just extend this unilaterally for one more year for these folks. But even if you did, it'd be a full 1 year. I don't know how they thought they would get by with just a partial year, because it's a full farming year.
Okay.
So do we need to go out for bids?
That would be my preference. I mean,
But we wouldn't do it then until, and it'd make it effective December 1st?
No, we just,
No.
we run it and say now through December 1st.
Or through November 30th, either way.
And whatever now is, whatever that day is,
Yeah.
it's still considered the farming year.
Yeah.
So they're paying a full year.
We need to do that next meeting.
Yeah.
Because they're
Yeah.
Right.
probably getting ready.
So can we have?
We could get something in the paper and have them submitted by, hopefully that would give them enough time, whatever your April meeting is, that if you award it at your April meeting, for them to immediately go out and get started.
Okay.
Now, I guess this is the thing, do we know what area you want to do? Because there's going to be some talk about not leasing it all. wasn't there?
I would just do a year contract and get through this year.
Okay.
That'd be my recommendation right now.
Okay, so that way the acreage would stay the same,
Yeah,
and just do it for 1 year
Yeah,
rather than
and could-
do it for a 3 year?
Yes, we haven't got any of it surveyed out or anything like that.
Okay.
Or we wouldn't want to do it for the remaining calendar year?
Oh, I mean, go through December 30th?
Right.
How come we don't do it 12 months? What's the, I mean,
Well,
if they have to buy their seed and stuff ahead of time, isn't March a little late to be?
That's why we're saying stop it at the end of the calendar year, and then the new contract would start in, say, January
Or maybe still end in November, so the new one could start December 1, so people even have a better heads up.
sooner than March.
Yeah.
We're not in a good situation by waiting till this time.
I know.
But rather than making it a 12-month and putting us in a bad situation every year, we just need to address it and know that November of next year, we ought to be really, November 1st, we ought to be really involved in this.
Yeah, I should have put a tickler on, I forgot 3 years was up, time passes.
It seems like we do it 1 year, we'll be on top of it next year.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I say we do a,
So I'll put something together to solicit bids, to have them bring it in by 5 that day of your next meeting. About 4?
4.
Okay, 4 o'clock of your next meeting, and it'll be just for 1 year, ending November 30th of this year, so, and it'll be effective immediately, and the same acreage as what you had before.
great.
And Doug, that was because, if we refresh my memory, down the road, we may need more room there, is that correct?
Yeah, because the ground north, when we go to take more cemetery
Cemetery.
space from that, we're gonna have to let it set for, speaking with people, 5 or 6 years and just mow it before we ever get any grass to grow again, so, because of all the chemicals.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
Motion to advertise for the 2020 farm ground cash lease agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right. Fraternal Order of Police Officers membership dues.
We're not sure how many years ago it was stated that they only paid $60, or we reimbursed them $60 for their FOP dues. Well, that's at Connorsville, but then we have an officer who joined the Richmond FOP, and those dues are $100.
Well, the Richmond one used to be 60, that's the one
Okay.
that they belong to. Apparently they've raised it over the years to 100 now. The
So,
Connersville FOP is still only 60, but, so I've got a couple that belong there and then one that joined here, so. At some point in time, they approved to pay $60, so I guess what we're asking is can we pay the $100 for the one in our county, so.
One in our county.
Wayne County.
Yeah, and that doesn't include the legal defense, but they pay that separate on their own, so.
What are some of the benefits of being a member?
I mean, they do a lot of stuff like shop with the cop, you know, at Christmas time, things like that. Networking is another thing. I personally am not a member yet, but.
I'm sure that networking's worked in our favor recently.
Yeah, that's not working in anybody's favor, I don't think, but.
Questions or comments?
Which fund would this be coming from?
Well, we have a membership thing, but I don't think we've not put enough money in there for that, right?
Yeah, we have memberships, but I mean, that's like everything that, you know, we all belong to, if it's dues for chamber, if it's dues for clerk treasurers, Doug's Water. I mean, I don't know if there's enough to pay if everybody had $100 that I needed to reimburse them for FOP dues out of that fund. Could it come out of the police instruction? Could it come out of that fund? Okay, then I
Yeah,
could
we
do
got-
that.
yeah, we can
Yeah, I
do
could
that.
take it out of that. There we go. Good question.
Take a look at what you had in dues, subscriptions, and if you have to, take it out of the second.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the $100 for the FOP Lodge 63 Richmond, Wayne County fees?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
And then are we still talking about the other guys going to Connersville?
Yeah, a couple of them have
Couple of
already.
do, yeah.
I mean, Craig, of course, came from
Right,
Connersville, so that
Connersville.
makes sense for him to stay there.
Right, right.
And Larry still works part-time there, still, he hasn't for a while, but so it makes sense for him too.
Right.
Okay. Got a second? All in favor? Opposed?
All right, I'll reimburse them.
Okay, last discussion on beginning the meeting with prayer. Bob and I have been discussing this, and like the Pledge of Allegiance, we'd like to consider starting with the pledge as well as a prayer. And to make sure that we're doing things properly, we'd like to invite the Western Wayne Ministers Association to come in and lead us in prayer. And so we would rotate it around each month with someone else coming in. Comments on this?
I support the idea.
What do you say, Bob?
I shared a legal opinion with Dan, which I would rather not do in public here, but would rather share with a confidential letter to each of you. So that, because there are certain legal issues involved with such an act, and I think it would be better suited to have that remain a confidential legal communication from me to each of you.
Didn't Connersville just get sideways with an organization down there? I think they just got some legal action because they started doing that.
Well, it was just the one person that wanted to do it. Who
Right,
said
that's all it takes.
Doesn't believe in God. She wanted
Right.
to give the invocation.
Right. And I don't want to get us in some legal action. I mean,
Let's table this
Right.
then until Bob.
I'll send to each of you a letter.
Yeah.
because I know a few years ago, the county, we had the 10 Commandments in front of the courthouse, and the county was going to fight this, and the 10 Commandments aren't in front of the courthouse anymore. So it got kind of heated. So I don't want to get us in some legal behind on this. Not opposed to it. I think it's a good idea, but as a legal matter.
I agree. Let's, Bob, send the letter out, we'll take a look at it, and we'll
Make a
bring it
decision
back.
from that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That finishes new business. Reports from committees, boards, and commissions.
I don't really have anything. I have a couple things. Number one, I don't know if anybody saw the car sitting out there that's wrecked, but we had an officer hit a deer yesterday morning about 3:30, so he was okay. It wasn't a big deal, but there's probably a couple $1,000 damage, so I haven't got an estimate yet, but hopefully the next couple days we'll get that done.
Is it drivable?
Yeah, it could be drivable, but it looks awful bad. So, hopefully we can get it in quick and get it fixed. So it was on the passenger side, so it's sitting out there if anybody wants to look at it. Craig had went to a SRO training back on President's Day in Indianapolis, and he had to pay for parking out there. Well, when he went in through this parking garage, I guess when he pulled in, there was people behind him, people in front of him, and he realized it was going to be kind of expensive. It ended up being $56 for the day. Our parking ordinance only allows $20 a day, so I didn't know if we could reimburse him for the extra $36 he paid, or that's up to you guys, or actually all of it. But the ordinance does say $20. It's kind of one of those deals. When he got in there, it was too late to turn around, so it is what it is. So.
I will say there's not, I don't know of a place downtown that's under $20. 50 some is a little high.
Well, I did read online, I did do a little research on that, and there were some other people that had comments on there that they paid $56 for 8 hours of parking also. So it must be this one particular parking garage, I don't know, but.
I didn't want to pull in there and then see what it was and then make a fool of myself.
Yeah, well, I mean.
Back out of there.
Yeah, so.
He didn't know.
Yeah, and actually he didn't know what there was a time limit anyway. That was probably my fault, but I didn't realize didn't think ahead about him being parking out there, so.
Yeah,
Might as well
I
pay
say we cover it.
We'll just obviously keep an eye on it in the future,
I
but
would suggest making that as part of the plan then.
yeah.
I do know you can get about half of that.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know if it was because of the holiday, maybe it was higher then too. It was actually a government holiday too, so I don't know. But I did see online where a couple other people had paid that though.
Yeah. I say do I have a motion to cover the $56?
I make a motion, we cover the $56 parking ticket.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Was it valet parking?
I'm sorry.
Was it valet parking?
Hey, I know the garage. I know the exact garage, so it's legit.
You've been hit by the two, right?
Where is it, downtown?
It's downtown, it's Capitol Commons.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yep.
gonna say the name.
Told you, yep.
Wow.
I don't know whether options there are when they go to, depends on, I guess, downtown where the training or whatever, the meeting or whatever's at, but, because they went last year also and didn't cost near that, so, I don't know. The resource officer will be back to work Friday. The one was on maternity leave, so that's good news.
Oh, that's good.
So we'll have her back, and we still have one in the academy until April 24th. So other than that, that's about it.
He's gonna graduate that soon.
Yeah.
It's coming right up.
It is.
Yeah.
Bob said it
Seems like
was
we're
quick.
just there.
Yeah, we were. And we've been short-staffed since into August, so
Yep.
again.
Any comments on Sheriff's Department hiring?
I don't want
Okay.
to touch that.
Okay.
Friday State. Friday State was there.
Oh.
Okay. Jeff.
On Wednesday, we received our Blackhawk breathing air machine that was donated by Sugar Creek in July of 16. It was tied up. The company moved from overseas back to the United States. Everything was really mixed up for a long time and it was on back order. So it was a $48,000 donation from Sugar Creek. It was approved in 2016. So it's been delivered and it's working great.
Awesome.
We really appreciate that.
Yes.
How much administration knows?
It was something we could never accomplish alone. For that kind of piece of equipment.
We do appreciate Sugar Creek.
He's glad to do it.
Does he want to go on water?
He may say that he has.
Put your name on it.
Yeah, right, that would be awesome.
Sell advertising.
Doug?
I don't have anything. No. I'm good.
Okay. Steve?
No, nothing extra.
Wastewater, we're still in multiple communications every week and 99.9% complete. I see no reason that positive things will be happening, rolling by the time we have our next meeting.
I believe all the contract documents for Center Street should be finalized, so we should be setting up a kickoff meeting with them sometime in the near future.
Richard, Jack, Doug, please say thank you to the guys, appreciate everything they're doing. That's all I have.
Okay. Up.
Nothing, although with the help of audience member, I think the 19th is going to be clear for me, so that first option would work for the 19th.
19th it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Glad I could help you.
6.
At 6 p.m.
6.
Yeah. Okay. Hearing no other questions, comments, we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.